Okay, well, thank you all for participating in tonight's Lyme Forest Block Conservation Project volunteer training. As you all know, the Lyme Forest Block, well, first of all, let me reintroduce myself. As you remember, my name is Corey Folsom O'Keefe, and I'm the Director of Bird Conservation for Audubon Connecticut, which is the state office of the National Audubon Society. And tonight's presentation is part of the Lyme Forest Block Conservation Project, which is a project that takes place in the Lyme Forest Block Important Bird Area, which includes the towns of Colchester, East Haddam, Lyme, Old Lyme, East Lyme, and Salem. The Important Bird Area is important to wood thrush and cerulean warbler and a variety of other woodland nesting birds. Via presentations, bird walks, workshops, and demonstrations, Audubon and partners have engaged hundreds of people who live within the IBA or visit the IBA about its birds, habitats, and what they can do to improve habitat for birds in their own backyards or at local land trust properties. For the second phase of the project, we are offering habitat assessments to private landowners. The assessments will be conducted by Audubon trained volunteers, you guys, and this evening's webinar is the final webinar of our 4-part volunteer training series. This evening, Kelly will be giving an update on our homework assignments from last time. Then both Kelly and Hugh will be going over the data sheet that you guys will be filling out when you do your habitat assessments. After that, I'll give a quick presentation on how to use Avenza, an app that you can use to track your path and record in images and notes during an assessment. And lastly, we'll have a quiz on the Birders Dozen. You all have been working really hard over the last few weeks to learn your birds, and I expect you're all going to ace the quiz, so don't stress out about it. Just a few more things before we get started. If you have a question during a presentation, go ahead and write it in the chat box and we'll try to respond to it there. Or we'll also stop between parts of the presentation to answer questions. And also just a reminder that the webinar is being recorded. So if you have to step out for a few minutes, you'll have the opportunity to go back and see what you missed. Now, one more thing, before I turn it over to Kelly, I do want to share with you all a little bit about the habitat assessments of land trust properties that I've been doing in the past week. I've seen some incredible habitat and have come to realize that there is a silver lining to the oak mortality that we're seeing in Eastern Connecticut as a result of gypsy moths. So I went to 2 land trusts last week. Properties. Well, one is actually owned by the town of Lyme, and this is the Johnston Preserve, which is about 250 acres, along Route 82 in Lyme, Connecticut. And it went to, parked in the parking lot, which is over here, and, walked throughout this property, exploring all the different habitat types. These areas that have a 3 on them were areas that had a wet component to them. They were sort of a drainage or a wetland. And then this area here that's marked as 2, you can see that there's some darker vegetation amongst the deciduous trees. And that actually turned out to be mountain laurel. Working with Eric Hansen, a forester that we work with, I was able to sort of walk this property. Also walked the Darling Road Preserve, which is owned by the Salem Land Trust and the Nature Conservancy, another 257 acres. And similarly, Eric and I, parked up here at the parking lot and then sort of walked through this property, exploring the different habitat types. This area here, number 2, may look similar to that area at the town of Lyme's Johnston Preserve that had some different vegetation. But this actually turned out to be invasive plant species. This actually ended up being a lot of barberry. When you're looking at a map, you might sort of think, okay, I've got some deciduous or hardwoods, and then I've got maybe some conifers here, but sometimes you don't know until you get there what you're actually sort of seeing in that area, but it's different than the rest of the forest, so you want to go check it out. So one thing that we noticed when we were walking both of these properties was we could see the impact of the gypsy moth infestations that we've been having in Connecticut. As a few years ago, we really had a lot of gypsy moths in Eastern Connecticut. And then the next year continued to have a lot of gypsy moths. And the gypsy moths were really defoliating some of our oak trees, particularly white oaks. And that did end up resulting in a lot of death of white oaks. Eric shared a picture with you guys 2 webinars ago that just sort of showed the impact that those gypsy moths were having. And, since oaks are so important to forest nesting birds because they have so many caterpillars associated with them, this doesn't sound good to lose all these oaks due to gypsy moths. But we realized that there's a silver lining. So it was kind of like, whoa, oh my goodness, this is amazing. So wherever we had, this oak mortality, so here's an oak here that died, here's another one here. What we ended up seeing was that opened up the canopy enough that a lot of light was able to reach the forest floor. And as you guys have all been learning, when light is able to reach the forest floor, you get sort of establishment of an understory. The plants that are there, whether it's blueberry or huckleberry or young trees, finally have this opportunity to really grow. And this is a picture of the understory. Actually, in this picture on the left here, you can see there's hickory regenerating. There's some tulip trees, some oak trees. I believe this is some beech here. There were some on the Darling Hill Preserve. There were some amazing areas of huckleberry and blueberry, and they were all in these areas where you found canopy gaps or where you had this oak that passed away. But you had this amazing understory developing. And the other surprise, and this was just a wonderful surprise, was that in those canopy gaps, we were finding cerulean warblers. So cerulean warblers, as I've mentioned on, I think, the webinar last week, are a species that's on the red list of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. They're really declining across their range, except in Connecticut, which is one of the places where they seem to be increasing in number. And they need mature deciduous forests to breed, but they do have this association with canopy gaps. And those may be, natural, like a tree falling down, or sometimes they can be man-made, where a landowner might choose to sort of maybe cut down a few trees to sort of create a gap. And these birds like to nest on the horizontal branches of trees in the canopy, and they like no or limited mid-story underneath them. Ideally, it might be because maybe, if they can see what's directly below them, they know that no predators are sort of sneaking up to their nests. And a student I know, Benjamin Van Doren, he actually shared this picture with me today. So this is like hot off the press. This is not in the Lyme Forest Block, but it's just a great example of a cerulean warbler nest. You can sort of see it's just on the horizontal branch of what looks like to be a white oak tree here. So this was up in Northwest Connecticut, but this is basically what we're seeing. We're seeing these canopy gaps, because of a white oak passing away. There's still lots of other trees that are big and healthy in the vicinity, but you're getting this beautiful understory developed, and we're finding cerulean warblers in those gaps. So it's really exciting, and I hope this is something that you guys see when you're doing habitat assessments. And at the very least, when we go out to the land trust properties, looking like it's going to be in the month of July, to sort of get some outdoors firsthand experience to sort of add to your resumes, then hopefully we'll go to some of these spots and see if we can see some of these cerulean warblers, or at least hear them. They're so high up in the canopy, it's hard to see them, but hopefully we'll hear them. So just an exciting tidbit I wanted to share. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kelly.
Okay, so your homework assignment this past couple of weeks was to take pictures of habitat features on your property, or go to your favorite park and find those habitat features. And a bonus was to tell us what birds associate with those features. This is one of the photos that was sent in of one of your properties. And I just wanted to point out here how the lawn isn't mowed from the picnic area right up to the house. You see that really thick, nice like field-like grass where the grasses and wild flowers can grow. That really has value too. Even if you have a real small property on the side of the woods, allowing that to grow is just a real value for birds. It creates food for them and shelter. So this was a wonderful picture that was sent in by one of the volunteers. Here's some other great photos. You see some canopy gaps here and a riparian waterway. There's a big forest of softwoods. We have some downed woods, and some of you were able to tell us what type of birds associate with these things. I think the top left one might have been accompanied by the ovenbird, and nice little clearing gap with some mid-story here on the right. Here's some nice pictures of where people went to their local parks. And this left corner here, look at how thick it is in the mid-story and understory. I think that's beautiful. The center top is much less of an understory, where it's just got ferns and some riparian areas. And here's another property on the lower right where it's got a nice soft edge. There's lots of mid-story and lower bushes that feed up into the forest. So it's nice not to mow your lawn right up to the trees. Let some grow. There's a beautiful wood thrush down here that one of our volunteers spotted. And here's some more photos. Bottom left shows not much in the understory at all, yet there's quite a canopy on top, and we have some pictures with leaf litter and fields that are allowed to grow. So great job. The Eastern Peewee, I believe, is up there. So great job with your homework. And I want to encourage you guys. We have we're not giving you homework this time around, but if you would like to do something extra, really work on that cerulean warbler. That's Corey just finished telling you about it, and how we're so excited that there's really seeming to be so many more, and the habitats that they associate with are really developing even more in the Lyme Forest Block. So it's really hard to see them, especially when they're high up in the canopy, but you can hear them, and they have a distinct song. We're going to play that for you a little bit later, but try to listen to that song many times. Every time you go out, try to listen for it, and you can tell whether it is or isn't. So really try to burn that one in. It should be one of the birders dozen, especially for the Lyme Forest Block. It isn't, but work on the cerulean warbler. And great job. You guys have done amazing work all the way through these presentations. You're going out there and you're taking photos, and you're telling us descriptions of what you're seeing and what you're learning about. And you are showing that your dedication is turning you into true champions of birds. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so that you can share your screen, and you can go over the data sheet.
Okay. Okay. If you guys were able to print out the data sheet for the forest bird habitat assessments that I sent, go ahead and pull them out so we can go through it together. We'll probably add one more page with definitions and of some of the terms used, with a little more directions to help you. But other than that, this is the actual data sheet that you'll be filling out when you're doing your habitat assessment. The top portion here is the information that we need to know, and you can fill that out right at the very beginning, with the property address, the landowner name, the volunteers. If you're with someone else, you only need to fill out one data sheet, but put both of your names there. You'll see the list of priority birds in Connecticut with the birders dozen highlighted in yellow. Those are the birds that you've all been learning about, and the ones we would like you to focus on. Many of you are really good at bird identification, so go ahead and mark any of the birds, the other birds that you hear and see. Mark birds as confirmed if you see it, or if you can positively identify its song. You mark birds as potential if you find the habitat that these birds associate with. So if you find a closed canopy with softwood or hardwood mix with some mature hemlock, you have the potential habitat for a black-throated green warbler. So be sure to mark that on your data sheet. You may not see one very often in the Lyme Forest Block, but the potential is there. Here's some other forms of habitat that you might find. Keep an eye out for the waterways and the beautiful understory, mid-story, and higher. You might see the Louisiana water thrush. You might see the chestnut-sided warbler. So if you see the habitats, go ahead and mark those on your potential as potential also. And here is the beautiful cerulean warbler. I'm going to play the song for you. These are a couple photos that Corey took, and you see their beautiful high canopy with gaps at the top. Beautiful song. You able to hear that, Corey?
I couldn't hear it that well, so maybe play it one more time.
Yep, volume's all the way up. Just be sure you guys go ahead and Google it up and listen to it, and make that one of your priority birds to try to listen for while you're doing your habitat assessments. Here's some more pictures of the dead oaks that Corey was finding with the canopy gaps that were in the Lyme Forest Block. On page 2, go ahead and flip your page. And this is the general property description. We'll be writing up habitat assessment reports. Hugh and I will be containing the basic property descriptions based on the data sheet. So your answers to these questions will help us with this section of the report. If you can take pictures of the habitat features you find, that would be great, and you can send them in. Be detailed as you possibly can. There's extra places on this data sheet to write down notes, jot things down. You can even use the back of it if you want to add more information. We have a section on horizontal diversity. So what types of habitat diversity did you encounter? The list includes deciduous woods, evergreen, open wetlands, forested wetlands, riparian wetlands, open water, fields, or other. Circle all the habitats you saw. There's a question on vertical diversity. Tell us about the trees that made up the canopy. Provide details as specific as possible and indicate the abundance, with 1 being the most common tree and 5 being the least common tree you encountered. That list is oaks, maples, birches, hickories, white pine, or other. You guys feel free to bring out the PDF version of the slide that Eric showed us, which is one of them right here on the left top with the identification of the leaves. And he also sent us one with the barks. So you can go ahead and bring those with you.
On the walks that we'll do at the land trust properties in July, since I've been going out with Eric in the last week, I have gotten really good at my barks. So we'll definitely be pointing them out to you and sort of sharing little secrets for identifying those barks.
That's excellent. And using word association really helps.
Yes.
Yep. The question about, was there any sign of hemlock, woody adelgid, hemlock scale, or gypsy moth egg masses? So just keep your eye out for these. Did you find areas of canopy or gaps? Did you see areas where the light was shining through onto the canopy and lit up an area on the forest floor? Remember, if you find areas like these, you can mark the potential for scarlet tanagers and red-eyed vireos. Those are the habitats that these birds associate with. So go back to your first sheet and mark them down. Here's some more of the pictures of Corey's walk on the in the Lyme Forest Block. And these are great representations because this is where you guys are going to be walking. And if this is happening on the land trust properties, they very well could be happening right on the smaller properties of the landowners that you folks will be walking with. Are there wooded areas of the property regenerating with seeds and sapling? If so, what species? Corey and Eric saw a lot of regenerating birches, so keep an eye out. Birch saplings have a slightly minty smell, so deer aren't as likely to browse on birch saplings as other hardwood saplings. In the picture on the right, you can see hickory, maples, and oaks regenerating. When you find areas like this, it really is exciting. Did you find areas of dense understory? Or were most of the areas moderately dense? Or did you find almost no understory at all? If you were able to, identify the species in the understory. There seems to be a lot of blueberries regenerating in the Lyme Forest Block, so keep an eye out for them also. Another question you'll have is, did you find areas of dense midstory? If so, what native plants did you see? You guys have gotten really good at learning your native plants. And in these areas of dense midstory, remember, this is good. The open midstory is good for the eastern peewee, and the moderately dense midstory is good for the wood thrush. Those are habitats they associate with, so you can mark them as potential. And in this dense understory, what kind of species? So tell us if you saw mountain laurel, spicebush, winterberry, huckleberry, and blueberry. And if you can identify any others, tell them what they are. The list will be on your data sheet, so just circle which ones that you saw. So if you saw a really dense understory, would a canopy gap benefit? Would it allow more light to come through if you saw those great native blueberries and spicebush? Would it benefit and allow those to produce more berries for birds? But remember, with a canopy gap comes bright sunlight, and it really makes the understory grow. So you got to watch out. Is there burning bushes down there, multifloral rose, Japanese barberry? Like Corey showed us in the map, there was a really thick, dense area on one of the properties of Japanese barberry. So these things are out there, and it's great to identify them and mark where you see them so that the landowner knows it's probably not a good idea to put in canopy gaps in those areas.
And that's a recommendation that we're going to actually make for the Salem Land Trust. You know, we did find this area that had a lot of, you know, that's the picture right there.
There it is.
So a lot of Japanese barberry. And the recommendation that we're going to make to them is that, you know, they shouldn't put any canopy gaps in this area because it'll really just equate to more invasive plants growing. But what they should focus on is the other areas of the forest that don't have invasives, keep them that way. Don't let the invasives from this area spread into those other areas. And, you know, the neat thing about this property as well was, even though this understory was horribly invasive, all barberry, I think there was Wingionomus in there, multiflora rose, those invasive plants still do provide structure. And we were seeing some dead oaks in this area, and there were cerulean warblers in this area, even though the understory was mostly invasive. You know, the structure was there so that the cerulean warblers were still interested in sort of associating with those canopy gaps and hanging out in the, you know, kind of nesting up in the canopy. So it was a really interesting area. But, you know, and that if you encounter an area like this, you know, where it's just tons of invasives, you know, you might mention to the landowner that, you know, this is going to be a hard area to sort of battle back the invasives, but focus on keeping it contained. Don't let it spread to other areas of the woods.
Thank you, Corey.
You're welcome.
Were there wildflowers growing near the forest edge? There's a lot of value to wildflowers beside beauty, and they provide a lot of food for the forest birds. What invasive plants did you see? Number them 1 to 5. So your list includes Asiatic bittersweet, Japanese barberry, burning bush, multiflora rose, and Japanese stiltgrass. I included the picture on the bottom left of autumn olive that one of you took. Although we only focused on the 5 species, you all seem pretty familiar with the autumn olive, and Corey said that they did see that on their land trust walk. So let us know what you see. If you're good with these IDs, tell us everything you found. The more information you write down, the more thorough our reports can be for the landowners. Did you find signs of deer browse? We have a lot of deer in Connecticut, and they really suppress the growth of saplings. There may be a lot of really small young saplings, but keep an eye out to 4, 5, or 6 feet tall saplings. By that size, they really have a good chance to regenerate into new young forest growth, which is really awesome. Did you find native species often labeled as invasives? Eileen shared with us a couple of weeks ago, a lot of times people think of these as really invasive and they want to pull them all out, but they have a good value for birds. There's a lot of soft mass here. They have berries and shelter. So if you found grapevine, poison ivy, Virginia creeper, blackberry, or raspberry, go ahead and circle them on your data sheet and let us know what you saw. Would you say that vertical diversity was poor, fair, good, or excellent? That's another question on the data sheet. Did you see a good combination of understory, midstory, and canopy? There's a nice picture that Corey took while she was in the Lyme Forest Block. It's got some standing dead in the back and some broken branches, a good understory, and some nice midstory, and there's canopy gap in the back. So in this section, we want to know what really stood out to you. What made you really kind of stop and say, wow, that is really cool? Or was it like amazing regeneration of blueberries or huckleberries under the dead oaks? Or maybe you saw a beautiful vernal pool or a spectacular view from a hilltop. Was there a field of milkweed? Or maybe the landowner had lots of bluebird nest boxes on the property. So in this section, just tell us what really stood out to you. Tell us about the landowner. These are a few examples of things that the landowner may be concerned about. So listen to the landowner's concerns. That they love their properties, and while you walk the properties with them, I am sure they're going to be telling you all about the property, the history of the property, what they want to do with it, concerns that they have, and invasive seems to be the #1 concern everybody always has. So tell them not to be discouraged by the amount of invasives. Keep them at bay where they are right now, and don't let them grow out onto the property anymore. But write down what they were concerned about. Also, ask them what their main objective is. People have different reasons for doing things on their property, and they might want to harvest timber or open areas to bring in more light. They might want to add more bird-friendly landscaping, or want to maintain a view that's slowly growing in with bigger trees. Just write it all down, whatever their concerns are and their objectives. So now we're going to start the features tables on the data sheet, and the tables will be included in the habitat assessment report that landowners will receive. And we want you to circle the value for birds that you think is most appropriate. and divide details in the comments. So the first table we have is about the forest cover and the forest block size, established forest, and percent of young forest. So there's a few ways to go about doing this. One of the great things is to use this Yukon Center Land Use Education Research Forest Fragmentation Map Viewer. You can learn a lot about reading maps and familiarize yourself with it. Here is one of the maps that we have of the Lyme Forest Block, and it shows the different colors for which areas are agricultural fields, which parts are deciduous forest, forested wetlands. So you can really use these maps, and you'll have the link to go on and check them out. It's kind of like what Corey was showing us earlier, where you can look at a map and tell what's on it before you get there. So you know areas that you want to look for. So I'm going to send it over to Hugh now, and he's going to fill in the rest for us.
Okay, so one of the things we're going to be going over on the data sheet is the building envelope, which I guess would be a physical separator between conditioned and unconditioned environment of a building. So in resistance to air, water, heat, light, and noise. So it could be described as the area taken up by the building, deck, driveway, etc. Anything that alters the natural environmental function. So really what we're trying to determine is how large is the building envelope? How are the edges? Do we have soft edges, hard edges? And what's really the condition there? So the presence of native plants, soft massing trees, shrubs, and softwood, evergreen pockets all have wildlife value. And on the other hand, invasive plants, while providing structure and some food for birds, do not support the number of insects for food as a food source that native plants do. And so one thing we want you to go over is, did you see these features during the assessment? So were there native plants or were there lots of invasives? Moving on to lawn and landscaping. Is the landscape friendly to birds? Are there native plants or wildflowers? Or how large is the lawn? Is it just an extremely large lawn like in this picture on the left? Or are there hard versus soft edges? Is there adequate cover for protection from weather and predators? And so the presence of soft edges and native plants help to provide cover and protection, food sources, and nesting materials. So that's definitely one thing that we want to look for is wildflowers and native plants. So please evaluate road and trail width and forest edges. Wide road and trails can fragment forest habitat. Fragmented woodland tend to have more predators and also more nest parasitism by brown-headed cowbirds. One way to reduce predation in cowbirds along forest edges and diversify available habitat is to create soft edges. So like the stadium effect, where we'd go from maybe a grassy field to low undergrowth to mid-story and then directly up into the trees. So really we want to make sure the trails aren't too wide. Ideally the trails shouldn't exceed 20 feet in width to keep forests intact to prevent fragmentation. So I guess on the data sheet there we'll be going over how wide are the trails on the property. Are they all 20 feet? And are they all less than 20 feet, all greater than 20 feet, or is there a combination of both? These are hard edge versus a soft edge. So are the transitions between the different habitat types gradual or dramatic? So soft edges with gradual transitions are extremely beneficial for birds and provide useful habitat and protection from predators. So are there all soft edges? Are there some soft edges? Or are there no soft edges? So again, we're looking for the stadium effect there. So the next thing we'd be looking for would be invasive plant infestation. So how severe was the infestation of invasive plants? Which species were present, or were there mostly native plants? As you already know, invasive plants have very little value to our forest bird populations other than for cover and protection. whereas native plants provide many services which make a particular habitat able to support native birds. So the data sheet will be going over, is there no infestation, low infestation, or moderate severe infestation, and what species were present?
One thing to note, when it comes to sort of native plant diversity and also invasive plant infestations, there might be areas on the property where you have lots of native plants, and then there might be areas on the property like the property, one of the Darling Road Preserve, where there was an area that was invested in, very much infested with invasives. So if you have an area like that, you can sort of say, that there was moderate to severe invasive plant infestation, but it was only in certain areas. So you can kind of put that in the comments.
So the next thing we'd be looking for is, did you find leaf litter and downed woody material? Many of the forest birds are insectivorous and hunt in the leaf litter for insects, such as the worm-eating warbler in the picture. So downed deadwood and brush piles are also a very important habitat feature for our forest birds, some of which may take shelter from predators there or utilize them as nest sites. And downed deadwood may also protect seedlings from deer, allowing them to reach sapling stage where they might have a little bit more resilience to the deer browse. And obviously snags provide important nest sites for woodpeckers such as pileated, and along with many other bird species who also utilize the tree cavities.
And this is one of the signs that you can look for. If you see a freshly made cavity by a pileated woodpecker, you can go ahead and feel pretty confident that you've confirmed a pileated woodpecker.
One thing I just want to note is, because again of the gypsy moth infestation that we've had over the last few years, there's all these dead oaks. So there is, we are finding that there are a lot of snags and cavity trees, on the properties, at least the land trust properties that we've been assessing. So just something to be mindful of, that, sort of another silver lining to the loss of some of our oaks is that it means that there's a lot more snags and cavities available.
So moving on to native plant diversity, was there vertical or horizontal diversity? Was there mostly native plants, or were invasives starting to take over, and where on the property, if there were? If there were native plants, were there many different species, or was it for the most part all the same? Biodiversity of native plant life is extremely important for the support of a variety of bird species, as different native plants provide different services, such as attracting insects, which could be utilized as food, producing soft and hard masts, also utilized as food, and also providing cover and nesting materials. So is the native plant diversity high, moderate, or low? And then you can leave comments on what you happen to find there. So these waterways and riparian areas, the presence and condition of the riparian areas and waterways are also very important habitat feature. So are there trees and shrubs providing shade and keeping the water cool? Or so some fish species as well as amphibians, reptiles, and insects need this cooler water, and birds may utilize these as a food source. So a stream like the one in the middle would most likely be too warm due to the lack of shade and plants growing along the side. Beyond this, the downed woody material, just like it provides important services in the forest, also is extremely valuable in water and provides an area for turtles, snakes, frogs to pull themselves out of the water and sun themselves. And beyond this, amphibians require this as they're making the transition to breathing air. So with meadows and hayfields, one of the things that we'd be going over would, how often are they mowed? Are they allowed to produce seed? Or how large an area do they cover? And again, are there hard and soft edges at the forest border? Are they allowed to be natural and wild, or are they used as hayfields? And if so, how often are they mowed? So natural meadows and fields are useful habitats for birds as they attract insects, rodents for food, and may also provide shelter or nest materials. So basically what we'll be going over is, are the meadows greater than 1 acre and mowed every 2 to 3 years, or are they greater than 1 acre or mowed every 2 to 3 years, so one or the other? Or are they less than 1 acre and mowed every year? So, and if there are hay fields, are they grassland bird friendly or not? So moving on to additional property recommendations. There's a list included in the report with ranging from call a forester to arrange a visit. Update your plan to include consideration for birds, learn the birder's dozen, start bird monitoring on the property, learn about invasive plants and develop a plan for monitoring and control, talk with neighbors and potentially coordinate management across the property border, keep the interior forest intact, promote diversity of forest age classes, promote a dense understory and midstory of native trees and shrubs, retain biological legacies such as large diameter trees greater than 24 inches diameter breast height, snags and downed deadwood, retain treetops on the site and avoid lopping slash, and finally contact Audubon Connecticut for a follow-up assistance or to review a management plan, or consult on the implementation on one of our recommendations. Then moving on to this, you may have tips that you want to give the landowner after doing your habitat assessment. So learn the birder's dozen would be one, plant native vegetation around the home, maintain or encourage a mix of deciduous and coniferous trees, encourage growth of varying heights along woodland edges, so soft edges, hard edges, promote dense understory and midstory of native trees and shrubs, retain snags and deadwood, learn more about invasive plants and maybe develop a plan for how to combat them and keep the interior forest intact.
Thank you, Hugh.
No problem.
Do we have any questions that are coming up? So we could take a minute to answer any questions.
There's one that came through the chat, and that was if we could say a little bit more about what is grassland bird friendly, what is a grassland bird friendly hayfield versus a not grassland bird friendly hayfield. Mm-hmm. So I think there's two components to that, and one of them is the size of the hayfield. So we haven't really talked too much about grassland nesting birds during this whole webinar series, but grassland nesting birds would typically include bobolinks, savanna sparrows. They could include grasshopper sparrow, upland sandpiper. The latter two, the grasshopper sparrow and the upland sandpiper, really need very large tracts of land. They're only found in a few places in Connecticut. They need really big open grassland areas. But bobolink and savanna sparrow can get by with less. So if a landowner has about maybe 10 acres of hayfields, that could potentially provide habitat for bobolink or savanna sparrow. But the trick is that a lot of times a hayfield gets mowed right around the first week of June, and that's right in the middle of the nesting season. So if bobolinks that are set up in a hayfield and then it gets hayed, actually, it will disrupt their nesting. So some landowners are willing to sort of delay haying a few weeks to give those birds an opportunity to nest and fledge their young. There's also strategies for haying that they can potentially use to, give some of the birds a sort of a chance. So maybe mowing, I think the sort of, when you go into hay, sort of starting in the middle and then working outward, so that any birds that are sort of, maybe fledglings that have just fledged the nest, they have an opportunity to sort of escape from the mower, in the process of it being hayed. But mostly, if for a hayfield to be, grassland bird friendly, it has to be probably about 10 acres, so good size. And then ideally the landowner is, taking, if they really are passionate about birds, then they might be delaying their haying by a few weeks. That would give those birds an opportunity to nest.
Thank you, Corey. So we want to discuss a few things about scheduling the land trust walk for your in-person training. So like Corey said, it's probably going to be sometime in July. We got to, really keep track of COVID-19 and what's being allowed and what's going to be the safest way of doing things. But we're planning on getting in touch with our volunteers and the landowners, and for the land trust walks, we'll have certain days that you guys can go out, so you can choose from a few certain days to go out and walk the properties. So as soon as we get those dates nailed down, we'll send them to you, and you could put it in your calendar.
One thing we're going to do with the walks on the land trust properties is, just for the sake of safety, we probably will limit the number on each walk. So, we're going to be I'll be leading 4 walks, and there'll be folks from the land trust on each of those walks. But, basically we're sort of thinking we'll maybe have a 10-person limit. And obviously we're all going to be wearing our face masks, and social distancing. But I think it's safe to sort of keep it to 10 people, so that we're not, kind of a bunch of us sort of clustering around trying to see a particular feature of the forest. So we'll kind of get those dates set aside. Once we have the dates, we'll email you guys and say, okay, tell us which dates you can do. And then we'll basically, sort of say, okay, we got, this, that you 5 come on this walk, you 5 come on this walk, you 5 come on this walk, the rest of you come on this walk, just to sort of separate it up, so that there's not, we don't really want to have 30 people on one walk.
Great, thank you. We'll also be scheduling volunteers and landowners to do habitat assessments as soon as things clear up, and after you've done your land trust walk, we will email you guys and we'll find out which days work best for you and the landowners to get together. So we're going to stay in contact about that. And we're also thinking about, we're going to have information for you to give the landowners. And so we're going to find out how the landowners feel about that. We know that we're trying not to make contact. So we're going to keep an eye on things and let you know what the best practice for that is going to be. How to turn in your data sheet. There's a few different ways you could do it. We're going to ask you, so maybe it's something you can think about and tell us what you think by the end of the webinar, or put it into the chat box. Would you want to just take photos of your data sheet or scan it and send it through an email? Or would it be easier if we gave you self-addressed envelopes to send to me with already have postage on it, so you could just pop it in the mail? Would that be easier? So those are things that we want you to think about, and we want it to be what's easiest and best for our volunteers. When you have photos that you take, you can just send them like you've been sending in your homework. Send them by email, just make sure you have them labeled. And we're also thinking about a refresher webinar before the assessments, maybe sometime after the land trust walks, or so you guys can have, if you might have more questions and you might want a refresher of some of the things we covered. So you can let us know what you think about that. Put it in the chat. We can discuss it later tonight. You can send us emails about it, and just something to think about. And there is still time to learn. Don't worry if you've missed a webinar. You can always go back and watch it again. I know a bunch of you have been watching them recorded. You don't have the opportunity to watch them with us live. Watching them recorded is great. If you're still a little bit worried about your bird ID, well, we're going to find about that shortly here. But if you're still worried about your bird ID, there's still plenty of time to get outside and work on that. So you guys have been doing a great job. Just keep at it. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Okay, and I will start sharing mine. There was one more question that came through, I noticed in the chat, and that was, what is lopping slash? So that is, it's included in one of the recommendations that you could potentially check off for a landowner. And what that is if a landowner is interested in doing some forest management, where they would potentially say be creating a canopy gap by cutting down some trees, or maybe they want to soften an edge, so they're going to maybe cut down some trees to sort of soften up the edge. The tops of a tree are basically called slash, and that's sort of the part that someone who's actually harvesting wood for the timber industry. They typically leave the tree tops in place, but a lot of the times, a harvesting company will actually cut them up into small pieces so that they biodegrade faster. But leaving the top of a tree whole, if a tree is going to be felled and harvested, or if it's just going to be felled, leaving that tree top whole is actually much better for birds and other wildlife, because it's basically it's like creating a bigger brush pile, and that's going to be more hiding places and protection for birds. It's also going to be more protection for seedlings and saplings that are trying to regenerate. And one thing that Eric mentioned to me is that they're finding in Vermont, where hardcore forest management is just more common. There's very big areas that are sort of managed for the timber industry. When they leave at least 3 treetops in a pile, that seems to be enough protection that trees are able to regenerate without being eaten by deer. So, basically, it just kind of goes to the importance of having, piles of brush, piles of sort of fine or coarse woody material in your woods. They really do have this really important value.
And that's one of the definitions that we're going to include in the list that we send attached to this data sheet. The very, very finalized version of it will have some of the lesser known definitions.
Okay. So we're going to move on to, I'm going to talk a bit about Avenza. Now, as you guys will recall from the last webinar, you guys are going to be getting some maps that will help you do your habitat assessment. One of them will be an aerial image showing the property surrounded, and the surrounding 2,500 acres. Another will be, basically the same thing. Another aerial image showing the property and the surrounding 2,500 acres, but that one will have the protected open space on it, so you can sort of see if the property is perhaps a corridor between open spaces, or protected open space. And then the last map you're going to get is a close-up aerial image of the property. And this is actually a geo-referenced PDF. And that means that you can actually upload it into the app Avenza, and you can actually use that map while you're doing your assessment. And so let me just show you these maps again. So, the map on the left is sort of a property with just the 2,500 acre buffer, which is the red line. Map on the right is the property, it's the Kent Land Trust, with the 2,500 acre buffer, and then also other properties that are protected open space labeled and highlighted. And then this is sort of more like this is the other map you guys will be getting. It would be something like this, where you get a sort of zoomed in image of the property. I think what we will try to make sure it includes is sort of waterways, so you'll be able to sort of see those. Now, we are not asking you guys to sort of divide up the property into different habitat types. We're kind of just going to be trying to walk around and just see as much as you can. So, this map has, all these sort of areas sort of highlighted, and then just sort of different habitat types. Your map isn't going to have that, but it will be a nice aerial image. It probably have the waterways on it, might have some roads on it as well, just so you can see, get a good look at the property. Now, this map will also be, like I said, it will be geo-referenced so that you can upload it into Avenza. So Avenza is an app that is available for Apple products, Android, and Windows smartphones and tablets. And you can get it by just going to the App Store on whatever type of cell phone or a tablet you have. And if you just sort of type into the search Avenza Maps, it should come up. This is what it looks like. And there is basically a free version. And the difference between the free version and the version you have to pay for is in the free version, you just get to upload 3 maps. versus in the version you pay for, which is $29 a year, which you guys don't need because you're only going to be uploading one map. You know, that one you can upload an unlimited number of apps. So Eric has Avenza and he pays the $29 a year because he uploads massive numbers of maps. But you guys are only going to be uploading, you know, maybe one map for a land trust property and then one map for the place that you're actually going to be assessing. So the free version should be fine. Once you find the app, you know, go ahead and, you know, get it, download it. And then when you go to open it for the first time, you are going to want to create an account. It's pretty simple, just, you know, entering your email address, creating a password. At that point, you're going to get a message that will ask you if you want to set up a map store account, and you want to just say okay to that. And then once the registration is complete, you know, the app will ask you if you want to sign in with your newly created account, which would be yes. And then you do want to allow the app to access your current location. So use the GPS that's on your phone so that it can actually sort of show you where you are on the map. So, so you'll get the app on your phone or on your tablet, and then we're going to be sending you guys the geo-referenced map of the property. And so just, you know, just so you guys know, as of last week, I had never used Avenza before. And I figured out how to use it on Monday, and I kind of went through all the sort of steps that you guys are going to go through to use this. And it is pretty easy. And we're going to send you this PowerPoint so you can literally walk yourself through all the steps too. But you know, you want to, we're basically going to send you an email that has the app. That has the map, and you'll open that email on your phone, and you will download the map. And then you'll sort of click on this little send to button, which is a box with an arrow on it. This is what it looks like in Apple, but there should be, you know, a similar function in other applications as well. And then, you know, if you have an Apple product, you kind of just, you want to send to this little area, this whole box will pop up, and there's the Avenza app. So you just send it to the Avenza app. And you basically, then when you go to open Avenza, the property map will be in your maps or in the My Maps section. So you can click on My Maps and there will be the property map. So when I tried this out over the weekend, I went to Osbornedale State Park, which is, I think we've talked about the Connecticut Bird Atlas a little bit during this webinar series. It's an ongoing effort to sort of record the presence and breeding status of all of the bird species that can be found in Connecticut across the state. And my breeding bird atlas territory is Osbornedale State Park. So I thought, well, let me go there and I'll try it out there. So opened up the app, clicked on the map, and here's the map in the app. And the first thing you want to do when you get to your property is you want to actually start tracking. So if you click on these little, this little 3-dot symbol here, it'll bring up this page. And here's record GPS track. So you click on that. And then right here, there'll be a button that says start tracking. So you'll just press the start tracking button, and then the app will start tracking your progress as you sort of make your way through the property. So you'll actually be able to sort of see exactly where you are on the property during the course of the assessment. And that will sort of just help you get around and know if you're getting to all the different habitat types. And this is just sort of showing off this example again. So here's the map that I made for Osbornedale State Park. And then this is, you know, after I've been sort of walking through the property for quite a while, you can see the track that I laid down as I walked, which is the orange line. And then the other thing you can do is you can also put in place marks or these little points. Now, I labeled them point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but you can just label them place mark 1, place mark 2, place mark 3, or you can label them whatever you want, but you can actually sort of drop pins on the map as well. And how you do that is when you first open the app, or when you sort of open your map and you start walking, when you're ready to drop a pin, the first thing you want to do is click on this little arrow here in the bottom left corner, and that will basically bring this bullseye to your current location. So it'll just move it. And if maybe you see something in the distance, you actually want to mark that, you can actually just sort of move the bullseye so that it's centered on the spot that you want to mark. And just so you know, the blue dot is your current location. So in this particular image, I wanted to drop a point at this particular spot. So when I first opened up, maybe the bullseye was over in this other area. And so I clicked on that little arrow, and the bullseye moved to my current location. And once you do that, you want to click on the sort of place mark symbol, which is this symbol here. So the little pin point. And then this sort of place mark page will come up, and you can change the title to whatever you want. Like I said, I made mine 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. But when I was out yesterday with Eric, he was putting things like wolf tree and, great understory. And he was marking his points like that instead of, just labeling them as points. You can change the symbol. So if you want, a red pin or a blue pin or a green pin, you can choose whatever you want. You can also upload photos, which is really nice. So you can have, the photos sort of associated with those points. So, here's a spot where I saw canopy gap and, uploaded a photo to go along with it. And then you can also write a description. So you just sort of click on the description and then click on edit, and then you can basically write a description. So actually in this one, I wrote red-eyed vireo territory, beech and red maple mid-story, multiflora rose, barberry, and euonymus are in the understory, hickory in the canopy. And then the nice thing about the photos is that, they're linked to the map, but they're also saved to your phone, which makes them pretty easy to download and, email to Kelly and Hugh or sort of share them with, kind of use them yourself. And last thing is definitely remember to hit submit, because if you just kind of close this up, it won't get saved. So hit the submit button. And then the other cool thing about Avenza is that when you get back to your house, actually, I don't even think you need to get back to your house. You can do this at the end of your assessment if you'd like. You can actually basically share your track and your points and your photos with us in just a few easy clicks. So the first thing you do is you would click on this button here, which is basically your layers, and it will bring up this page. And right here you can see, my 5 place marks, my points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and my 1 track, and that's basically my layers. And then I clicked on the send to button, and this page comes up, which is the export settings. So you can name your file whatever you want, but you want to make sure the format is a KLM, which can be opened in Google Earth. You can set your track as a track. You can also set it as a line. It doesn't really make a difference which one you use. They're both, openable in Google Earth. And then for data, I would choose custom, because it's basically saying, yes, my 6 features that if you click on custom, you can actually sort of choose, I want to, upload this feature, this feature, this feature, and this feature. But if you just sort of click on custom, it'll make sure it includes all of the features. And I'm saying this because the first time I tried this, I just selected all features, and then when I tried to open it in Google Earth, it didn't work. But the second time I tried it, I used custom, and everything uploaded to Google Earth just fine. So, and then same thing, once you get this all filled out, you just click export, and you can choose where you want to export it to. You might choose your email. And then you can send a copy directly to Kelly and directly to Hugh, and you can send a copy to yourself as well. Or you can just airdrop it to some other device, lots of options there. And the last thing is, just so you guys know, obviously you're going to get the PowerPoint just like you have every other week, but we also are going to make up a PDF with instructions specifically on using Avenza, a little handout that you can have. So that is the gist of Avenza. So it's a lot of fun, and it is actually pretty easy to use. So, something that, obviously you got to have a smartphone or a tablet to use it. But, definitely once I learned how to use it yesterday when I was doing a habitat assessment with Eric, I was basically using Avenza the whole time, like taking pictures, marking points. Like it was a really neat app to be able to use.
So Corey, Becky has a question. She said that Avenza doesn't appear on her iPhone app store.
That's,
So what are some options there?
it should appear on our iPhone app store.
It does not appear at all. I've tried it when you first mentioned it at the first class, and I was just trying it now. It doesn't appear at all.
Huh.
Hmm.
That's a really good question, because obviously, like, I went into my app store and it was there. So, and I have an iPhone, so.
And I do as well. It was fine on mine too.
Just make sure you're spelling it right?
Yes,
Huh.
I've searched for Avenza maps, Avenza. There's several choices that come up, and I search for all of them, and nothing appears.
Becky, do you have a teenager around? And I ask that only because I am not very techie at all. And if I want
No, my
anything
kids are all
done-
much older.
Oh, okay. When I want anything done, I hand it to a young person and they work their magic and then it suddenly appears. And
Yeah, my husband's the techie. I'll ask him, but see if it. But I don't know how I can get it otherwise.
I think that's something we can look into and get back to you about. Like, maybe maybe we can definitely do some Googling and see if we can find out if there's, maybe is it only on certain versions of iPhone, or is there another app that maybe is similar? We can look into it and see what we can find out.
great. George
Thank you.
and Mary just said that they've both got it successfully. So that's good.
Okay. Any other questions at this time?
We haven't seen any others.
Oh, we can see Deba's screen. Okay. So Deba, if you can stop sharing, I think it's time for our Birders Dozen quiz. So Hugh is going to share his screen. And what we'd like you guys to do is just pull out a piece of paper and write the numbers 1 to 12 on your piece of paper. And, Hugh's going to basically go through some slides, play some songs.
It might actually be 13 because I think.
13?
Yep.
Okay, so 13, right? 13. Anyways, take it over, Hugh.
I can't get. Okay, so we're just going to go through the quiz. I'm going to show an image. There are a few hints as well I might give, and I'll give maybe 30 seconds per slide, and you can jot down an answer, and I'll move on. And at the end, we have an answer key. And then if there are any questions after that about the answers, I did include some slides for each one of them. So what is the name of this bird? So call would be a flute-like eole ending in a sound like shattering glass. And I can play that here in just a second and make sure my sound is up.
Beautiful. Can I drop another hint and say, I've said before, this is my absolute favorite call.
Yep. Yep, I have a brown back, heavily spotted, white breasts, a large thrush, a little smaller than an American robin. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next one. So this is the chestnut-sided warbler. Can anyone describe the habitat that this bird typically associates with?
So that's question number 2. Describe the habitat that chestnut-sided warbler associates with.
Then I included the song as well. Okay. So this is question number 3. What bird could potentially be seen perched in this habitat? So it's deciduous woods with a nearly closed canopy with a canopy gap and an open mid-story, and snags to serve as foraging perches. So here's a hint. This bird is a sit-and-wait predator that sallies out from arboreal perches after insects returning to the same perch or one nearby. So this is question number 4. Can anyone identify this bird? So just write down your answer. This bird typically can be seen walking on the ground around the water's edge and prefers small, fast-flowing rocky streams in hilly deciduous forests. And I'll play the sound here as well. Here's a picture of the potential habitat. Okay, so question number 5, which bird utilizes this habitat? So which bird of the birder's dozen is known to strongly associate with hemlocks? I'm not sure if you can see in the picture, there's a good amount of hemlocks there. And a hint, prefers a closed canopy in uneven aged woodlands.
Strangers in the night.
Okay. So this is question number 6. Just write down your answer again. Which bird typically utilizes this habitat? So deciduous woods with a dense understory, forests, forest edges, old fields, and wet meadows. And then I included the call as well here.
Quite a chorus going on there. That's beautiful.
Spring peepers.
Yeah. Oh, and then hint, requires some open areas for courtship display. So this is question number 7. Can anyone name this beautiful bright red bird? Hint, they typically prefer a habitat with uneven aged deciduous woods of oaks and maples with a mostly closed canopy. And here's a picture of the habitat that they would associate with. I'll play the song here as well. Okay, so this is question number 8. What bird typically associates with this habitat? So this bird typically prefers wetter woodlands and low-landed wetland habitats, deciduous woods with a moderately closed canopy and a dense understory. And they use woody debris for nest sites and shelter, and are often found in riparian areas. So, hint, the song is a flute-like and ethereal, like a ball spiraling down a tube, and the call would be an emphatic veer. Okay, so this is question number 9. Which bird is it that creates elongated cavities such as this? So this bird requires large trees for nesting and roosting cavities, and the forest block size and the presence of snags are also very important. Yeah, I think I included the call here as well.
Somewhat of an atypical call there. It typically is kind of a key 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 that gets higher, like louder in the middle and then quieter at both ends. So it's like key 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 key.
So this is question number 10. This is the worm-eating warbler. Which habitat is typically associated with this bird? So write down your answer. So ID tips would be, this is a small songbird with a buffy head and underparts, brown to olive brown back with a black head stripe and a black stripe through the eye. I'll play the song here as well.
I was when I was doing a habitat assessment yesterday, we came upon the feature that that bird associates with, and Eric said to me, "Shouldn't there be some blank around, some worm-eating warbler around here?" And I said, "Yeah, I think it's good worm-eating warbler habitat too." And sure enough, within 30 seconds, one call. And so Eric was like, I'm becoming as good at this as Corey. I just, looked at a habitat and nailed the bird. And I said, you're good. You're learning, Eric. So.
Excellent.
So this is question number 11. I know this isn't one of the birders dozen, but I figured I would include it just because it's very important for the Lyme Forest Block. So this is the cerulean warbler. What habitat feature would be a good indicator for this species? So I know it wasn't part of the birders dozen presentation, but I think we did talk about it in the presentation today. So these beautiful birds can be seen hopping along branches in the canopy, picking insects from twigs and leaves. Hint, what feature in the Lyme Forest Block is improving potential cerulean warbler habitat? This is question number 12 here now. Can anybody name this bird? So just write your answer down again as well. Which birder's dozen bird can be identified by the white supercilium and the distinct black line through its eye? The olive brown back, a gray cap and pale underneath, Although they often stay out of sight, this bird can be heard singing all day long, even on hot summer afternoons when other birds have stopped calling. Here's another picture as well. This is question 13. This is the last question here. Can anyone name this beautiful bluebird? Again, just write down your answer. This bird is typically found in larger tracts of deciduous or mixed woodlands with 50 to 80% canopy cover and a dense shrub understory, and is very sensitive to forest fragmentation.
Just one quick thing to note is the call of this bird can be confused with the call of the cerulean warbler, but this bird is frequently found in the understory versus the cerulean warbler is pretty much 99% of the time way up in the canopy. So if you hear the sound coming from the canopy, cerulean. If you hear it coming from the understory, this bird.
So are we ready for me to show the answer key?
I think so.
Oh, I did have a picture of the habitat here. Yeah, so here's the answer key. Number 1, the answer was wood thrush. For number 2, the answer was regenerating deciduous woods of 5 to 10 years old, or a few years old. Number 3, eastern wood pewee. Number 4 was Louisiana water thrush. Number 5, black-throated green warbler. Number 6 was the American woodcock. Number 7, scarlet tanager. Number 8, veery. Number 9, pileated woodpecker. Number 10, slopes with mature deciduous or mixed trees.
You have slopes in there. I think that's the key feature.
Yep. Number 11 was canopy gap. Number 12 was red-eyed vireo, and I don't know why number 13 isn't showing up, but number 13 was black-throated blue warbler.
Mhm.
So we want to know how you guys did. So I'm going to just quickly open up a poll. And just want to know how many answers you guys were able to get right. So if you can, let us know if you got more than 6, more than 9, or if you got all of them. We'd like to know.
And a couple of those were tricky, so don't feel bad if you got a few of them wrong.
Yeah, I did also include slides after this for the answers. If there were any questions, we could always jump ahead to whichever one.
Okay, I think that is everybody. So I think you guys did pretty good. I'm going to share the results. So
Yay!
everybody got at least 6. Most of you got at least 9, and one person got all of them. So, but you guys, this is really good progress. You have
Awesome.
learned to master the bird song, the bird habitats, the bird identification by what they look like. Great job. Awesome. Yay. I mean, remember back to when we did this sort of a quick poll at the second webinar, and people were definitely still learning. So you guys have made awesome progress. So
Awesome.
good job. And definitely you can keep learning. So we're going to, go out on the walks of the land trust properties in July, and there'll be an opportunity to sort of just continue to fine tune your learning about the birds and the habitats that they associate with. Fine tune your learning about the plants, just about what makes for good bird habitat in woodlands. I want to applaud you all for, just sort of your dedication to, these webinars, to doing the homework assignments. Everybody has learned so much, and we are all like really, really proud of you, and we are so excited to be working with you on this project.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We've got the land trust walks coming up in July, and hopefully we'll have you guys out doing assessments, late July, early August. The other thing is that I wanted to just mention is that, hopefully there'll be other opportunities down the line for you guys to sort of volunteer and help Audubon with our forest bird work. But also definitely use the knowledge that you have gained through this program to help your local land trust, to make, modifications to your own properties, to, share your knowledge. You guys have had an opportunity to learn an awful lot about forests and birds and bird habitat, and what is really going to be a success is if you take that knowledge that you've gained over this course and continue to share it. So that's something I really hope you're all able to do. Okay, so at this point, we've made it's 8 o'clock exactly. We've stuck to our schedule. Yay! But we are glad to stay on for a little bit longer and answer any questions. And definitely we'll be in touch. We'll be sending out some materials. Tomorrow we'll be sending out the webinar about a week from now, and we'll definitely be in touch about those land trust walks very soon. You guys are the best. Your comments make me feel really good.
Absolutely. Yep, looks like people are hopping off, and good. I would suggest what I'm going to do anyway is give my phone to a teenager and have them bring up the Avenza app, and then I'm going to go for a walk on my own property and play around with it.
Sounds good. Yeah, it is definitely pretty easy to use. Like once I I was a little like at first like, oh God, I got to figure out how to use this app so I can give a presentation on it. But once I got was able to actually upload a map and then go to a property and start tracking it, and it was actually really easy to use. So
Good.
And it was a lot of fun to use. So I think everybody will enjoy.
Excellent.